pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll do roll call.
Casey Benner.
Here.
Frank Myers.
Here.
Donna Roush.
Here.
Martha Patterson.
Here.
Leanne Woldvogel.
Here.
We have quorum.
Okay, moving on. The approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes of the July 25th, 2019. Oh, tonight's meeting? Yeah. Motion to approve the agenda of the August 19th, 2019 regular meeting.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Sorry about that.
Didn't kind of roll off, yeah.
Let's move on to the approval of the minutes from our last meeting of July 15th of 2019.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the July the 15th, 2019 regular meeting as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Introduction of evidence.
I have here the city code, the National Register Historic District Design Guidelines, and then I've sent you all the staff reports and other documentation, and there's also hard copies in the center of the table.
Do I have a motion to accept?
I move to accept the evidence as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving on to old business. The historic preservation, economic hardship determination.
I sent you a hard copy. This is what we've been talking about the past meeting or two about possibly adding unnecessary hardship into the historic preservation ordinance. And last time, instead of kind of getting into adding a whole section to the ordinance, what we discussed was maybe just adding one paragraph or line to the standards for review section, and that's what I have prepared and given to you this evening. Does everyone have a copy? Where's my copy? I sent it to you, let's see, last week.
I read it online. I like the way that you phrased it.
I basically allowed for consideration of not meeting the design guidelines due to unnecessary hardship for low and moderate income individuals, and put in there that the commission can ask for proof of that. They don't have to, but they can, of low to moderate income or extensive medical bills, something of that nature. And then the fact that that documentation would be kept completely private.
I understand that why it is necessary. I have some questions, though. The statement is too broad, really, that you're asking us for. And I'm not sure that the Landmarks Commission, or whatever we are now, has the necessary authority to dig as deep as you're going to have to dig to make this thing effective. You're going to require financial information that
It's not required.
in all probability.
Yeah.
I mean, the possibility is there.
Correct.
And I don't think that in open session we should be asking those questions. We're not qualified to judge on the basis of health. I believe this thing should be in the thing, but I don't think that this board should be asks to do it. I think it's a job for probably the Board of Aldermen. Your statement, the commission may require documentation, I think that should be will require. Just a minute, I'll be finished.
Oh, take your time.
And form and rhythm, do you mean proper maintenance by that?
No, we discussed at the last meeting kind of the shape and mass of the building, you know, that we do, if we allow someone to do something outside of the guidelines, such as change the roof, that they're not changing the shape of the roof, they're not adding to it, adding a gable, anything like that. So they could change the material, that would be outside the guidelines, but the actual roof itself would be the same shape and size.
Okay, but I think perhaps that language could be more definitive.
Do you have example?
No, I hadn't thought of it because I thought it was probably, I thought it was maintenance that you were referring to. And
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure that most people reading form and rhythm when they're talking about a house are going to understand what you mean. It's just, it's I think a very necessary thing that we have. But it's a thing that can be reused, can be misused and will be, the requests for misuse will be there. And it's going to be frequent, I think. Everybody that wants to do something is going to have a bundle of excuses, and I'm not sure that this commission, appointed commission, is the people to ask those deep questions.
That's certainly up to you all. I think this commission, through its knowledge, you know, depending on the subject matter, has more, maybe not authority, but more knowledge. You know, the Board of Aldermen relies on this commission to make recommendations to it in some instances. So,
Well, we may have knowledge of the structure, but or whatever the issue is, but we certainly don't have knowledge of the requester's financial basis and health problems and his family.
mhm.
That's where I think we're weak, because we would pass it because we're embarrassed to ask the questions.
Well, we can certainly, you know, depending on the vote of the board, make it will require instead of may require. There's also, you could further stipulate what low to moderate income is. There's a definition by the Housing and Urban Development Department, federal department, of what exactly that means.
Depending on where you are.
Oh yeah, it depends on where you live, but there's a definition out there of moderate to low income.
In many cases, your income may be low later in life, but you may have something stashed away that could be used for maintaining a building.
If you remember last month, I gave you examples, two of them, one from Philadelphia, one from New Orleans, and it specified the documentation that you'd have to submit, you know, whether it be tax forms or medical bills or a profit and loss statement. I mean, this wouldn't really be a business-related topic. This is more for residential homeowners. But it's specified, and I thought out of that meeting we talked about kind of narrowing this down into a more concise statement instead of creating a whole section. So that's the route I went here.
I agree that those questions are going to be asked, but as I say, an appointed commission such as we are, I'm not sure that is the proper group to be digging into personal business of the applicants. We do dig into their judgment on preservation, and that's what we're supposed to have some knowledge of.
I feel the same way as Frank does. That bothers me.
About asking for the documentation?
Well, that we're qualified to do it. Also, too, I would like to see a better definition of hardship. Could it be categorized and make it a little tighter? Hardship could be on death of immediate family. Hardship could be loss of job. Hardship could be defined to make it tighter.
I can look and see. I mean, I think sometimes that's going to depend on the particulars of multiple situations. I can definitely look up the definition of, if we want to consider this only for low or moderate income, that, and somehow include it in another draft. Hardship, I can certainly try.
To define it.
Did you say that, and I apologize for missing the last meeting, but I couldn't make it. Did you say that there was, this was defined and operationalized elsewhere, like in New Orleans? They had definitions of this?
In New Orleans and Philadelphia.
And again, I apologize for missing the last meeting. Did you share those definitions?
I shared their policies with.
Yeah, he had good examples of
And is that
different
where
places.
is that where we're migrating back to here, maybe?
It sounds that way, yes.
And would you be the, for lack of a better way of saying this, and I don't know how else to say it, but would you be then, once this committee, if this committee and when this committee decides how they're going to define and operationalize, measure these dimensions, or whatever you want to call it, would you be the clearinghouse for that? Could they give you the authority in your position?
I think that's our
To
question.
determine
Martin?
if they qualify.
Yes.
So I would be able, what you're asking is,
You'd
would
have
I
a
be
che-
able to
you'd have a checklist.
accept the documents and say, this individual qualifies for this?
Per your defined parameters.
That would be better than all of us
Or even maybe-
looking at it.
Because I think if you had clearly defined, I'm just tossing this out there.
No, it's a good
Because
idea.
I agree that it would make me very uncomfortable on this board to clear that, but I don't see why maybe the alderman yourself couldn't clear. But that's up to you guys. And yeah, maybe you, this board.
Well, yeah, just to define the parameters of what can go into that.
Exactly.
Can that be allowed because, can they be allowed to do less because they have X amount of dollars?
Yes, ma'am. So if Mr. Bova had this clearly defined checklist, if you will, and he came to you and said, this particular family or person does qualify, then he can present it in that fashion. Would that make us more comfortable on this board?
It would almost be like on the staff report where it says it's contributing, there would also be a comment
Exactly.
that this person qualifies for this consideration.
That's what I'm
Yes,
wondering.
Make it more
The,
comfortable.
yeah,
Okay.
this set, list of circumstances.
And honestly, it probably would make the folks more comfortable too, because less eyes are on it.
And I'm not telling you what to do, sir, but that may be something we want to broach. with
Actually,
the
that's a
alderman.
better approach, I think.
I think that sounds,
That's
There's
fine.
nothing in the sunshine law that allows you to go to a closed session to discuss somebody's financial.
I think we should make a motion, to make a motion, I will, that we agree in principle with the concept, but before we give final approval to its implementation, we should conduct more study of the subject.
Yeah.
In particularly the legal and the financial and medical.
And keep in mind, what we're looking
aspects
for
of it.
ultimately here is a recommendation to approve,
right.
I'm sorry, the recommendation to the Board of Aldermen. We can't alter the ordinance ourselves.
No,
Right. That's right.
it's a question, should we, as is stated here, we have the approval and we send it to the board? And I'm not sure, is that a better position than we make a recommendation to the board for their approval?
I can certainly send out a question to the 8 of them and ask them if they would prefer, is that what you're asking? Would they prefer to make this determination versus us, or?
Or have a defined parameters that you can make your decision.
I think we're headed that route
That's,
for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yes. I hear exactly what you're saying. And so there's a motion on, oh, I'm sorry, you're the president. I'm just going to get out of the way. There's, I just,
That we table this till later?
so thought maybe come back with clear definition at your next meeting, maybe.
Frank, was your motion to support the general idea of this, but to do further research and come back with a more defined definition of who would qualify?
Yeah, more defined parameters.
That sounds like
perhaps.
a better motion.
Okay.
Okay.
So I second the motion as Frank presented it, that we define the parameters and come back to the next meeting.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to redefine the economic hardship and bring it back at the next meeting. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hold on just a minute, sorry.
No
You're
hurries.
fine.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay, moving on to new business. SGHC 042-19 to receive a certificate of appropriateness to replace the current wooden windows with a new style of wooden windows at 249 Jefferson Street. Do we have anyone here that could speak on that?
That would be me.
Okay, would you come to the podium, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Make sure you clearly identify yourself.
Well,
I'm not sure how to do that because I'm going to be changing my name, but I'm Krisha Google. I've owned the house for 16 years, and we've been doing a lot of renovations here and there on the inside, but it's time to fix the windows on my house. They are breaking. We've had wasps and hornets getting into places I don't even know where they're getting into. And to be quite honest, I've already replaced a couple of them on the side of the house because my boys have broken them and I had to do something to fix them. But I knew that I needed to get approval, especially for the ones that are facing the street that you can see. And so I'm wanting to, basically I've got wood windows and I have, I think, enough to replace all but 3. And I was able to acquire these when Lucent was going out of business. And my ex-husband was working for them and they weren't able to pay them. And so they allowed him to make the windows for the house. The only problem is I know that you guys expect wood windows and I have that. I just don't have the crossbars. And I'm just wanting approval to put these windows in place of the old ones without the crossbars. There's a house across the street from me. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it. It's Al Kaiser's house. And he has newer windows and there are no crossbars. It just seems like it's an added expense and more time. And I've had these windows for 4 years. So I would really like to be able to at least replace the ones in my boys' room, because they actually have the room in the front of the house and their room is not sufficient in the winter time. It is freezing in there and I put plastic and everything else, and my other boy's room has plexiglass over his windows, which makes me really terrified in case there was a fire or whatever. So that is what I'm requesting, that I'm able to put these in. This is only part of one, obviously. I couldn't bring the whole thing, but this, I brought them so that you could see that they are in fact wooden. This one's filthy, and I will be painting them white before I put them in so that they match the color of the windows that I currently have.
Have you looked into the snap-in munions? The snap-in
I haven't looked into
crossbars?
them, and if I have to, I will, but it's just, I'm currently raising 3 boys on my salary, and I'm, holy cow. It's just been super busy, and I just don't want to spend more money if it's not extremely necessary at this point. I don't know how much they are, and they may not be that much.
I don't
but
think just the snap-in parts are all that expensive.
I just,
oh, I'm sorry.
Here we should have to go.
What was the question? Are they insulated glass?
No, she looked into the snap-in
Oh,
crossbars.
My house was built in 1898 and it has the single panes just like she's wanting to do. And they're all original, except the back. Somebody redid the back and goofed them up, but that's a different story.
Will the windows go in the same size? Like, you're not going to have to alter
No.
any of the, okay.
No, huh?
They're not insulated glass, so, I mean, is it double glass with the space?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
fine.
Mm-hmm.
That means you won't need storm windows.
Right, and I mean, if I get to a point where I can purchase storm windows, I will put storm windows in too.
Yeah.
You know, I need to, you know, a little bit at a time. And I don't plan on putting all of these in all at once because I can't afford to pay somebody to do that all at once. So we're gonna do it a few windows at a time, but we'll make sure that we have them done by
Now,
before it expires.
what's your mechanism for raising and lowering them?
I don't really know the
Well,
term. They're called double hung windows. I don't know if that helps, but
The old way of doing it, of course, was a little pocket next to the window and a weight on a rope.
right.
But
I don't have that with these. They just, they just slide open and they stay
my
open.
house doesn't have them either, and it was built in 1812 or.
Admittedly, the
1810.
current ones that I have in my house do have
But it
that.
has a clever little spring arrangement on it that the blacksmith made, and it works.
I know the windows that I'm wanting to replace have the weight, like have the old weight
Yeah.
thing. They're really getting bad. They don't keep wind out and they rattle really, really badly. And I also have a lot of, like I said, a lot of insects have been coming into my house.
Well, I'm very pleased that you're proposing to put wooden windows back in.
Well, I
But,
knew that was a preference, and we had an opportunity with the Lucent offer, and so we went with that.
Yeah, I think it'll work. My personal opinion, and it is an opinion based on a little bit of expertise, I think that particular house probably had 2/2s rather than 1/1s. But if somebody does want that appearance, the window is deep enough that you could put you could put a strip down through the center, and you'd have 2/2s.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'll do whatever I need to do.
Well, I don't think you would need to do it because I don't think anybody here is qualified to say that that particular house demands 2/2 windows. I think that's probably the era that it would be, but you're not going to go wrong with that window that you're proposing.
Okay. So,
Are there any other questions from anyone else in the commission before we move on?
No, I make a motion that we accept the project as presented.
thank you so much.
And I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to accept as presented for the certificate of appropriateness. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
So you know the protocol, this will be presented to the Board of Aldermen for final approval,
Okay.
or is it automatically approved?
She's good to go.
Are you messing with me?
Yes. I'm sorry. You are good to go, ma'am.
You're approved.
I'll have a-
I know where you were.
I love you.
I'm free to go. I do have the little boys being watched right now.
Yes, ma'am,
You have to mess with
around with
I'll be on.
I'll have a certificate of appropriateness for you tomorrow, but yes, you don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting.
But I have to sign it, don't I? I mean, don't I?
Don't let him sign anything.
Good seeing you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Thanks again. I appreciate it.
thank you.
okay, moving on, administrative approvals.
I have 5. There's a certificate of appropriateness to replace a roof at 279 Academy. That's a non-contributing building. That's SGHC 39. SGHC 40 to receive a certificate of appropriateness to extend a replacement fence as previously approved. That is a contributing structure. This commission approved that fence about a year ago, and they're just extending it slightly. SGHC 41 to receive a certificate of appropriateness to install a new projecting sign at 73 North Main. And then there are a couple of attestations there as to material replacement at 475 Merchant on a roof, and at the location that we just approved their windows, she is also repairing, she has a sunrise in the gable, and it's starting to rot a little, and she's keeping it, just repairing it. That is it.
Okay. Moving on to other business.
I just wanted to mention and ask for a motion of support if you so see fit. I have pre-applied, so it's not quite an application yet, but pre-applied for a historic preservation grant from the State Historic Preservation Office. This would support a historic preservation workshop, hopefully a day of classroom setting where we would talk about restoring homes, where we would talk about, my hope is to have a class for realtors on how to identify to potential buyers that you're buying a home in the historic district, amongst other topics. And then 2 days of hands-on workshop with either a contracted historic preservationist or locals. I have support from Donna and the Department of Natural Resources. Have support, financial support from the Foundation for Restoration, which Mr. Myers sits on. Also have financial support from some local citizens. This would be in the spring or summer of next year. And honestly, if you have any questions, let me know, but just looking for a motion of support, that will help the grant application.
I make a motion to support the City of St. Genevieve's application for the Missouri State Historic Preservation Office grant and workshop.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
I like the idea of the classes in repair. It would be really good if we could do more of that.
My hope would be to also videotape these, though I don't know if it's a contracted preservationist, if they really want that out there, though you could YouTube it now. And then be able to hand that to folks who want to repair their windows or repair their wood siding. That's
Yeah, in keeping with the
Yes.
preservation. Yeah, I like that.
I may know some kids that would help with that.
There you go.
Any public comments?
Start writing up grants.
Can I get a motion for adjournment?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
I have a motion, do I have a second? And a second, all in favor? Aye. All right, thank you guys for coming.
Thank you all very much.
I love how thorough your